Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. My name's Rabbi Andrew Bentley, Rabbi Andrew Allen Bentley, the Rabbinic Cynic, Rabbi Dude. You could just call me whatever you want to call me. Just don't call me Mr. Bentley. I don't like that. I don't like that. Spent all those years in rabbinical school and studying, so don't like being called Mr. Actually, that's a segue really into what I'm talking about today, and that's the idea of humility, what it means to be humble. I have a friend who told me how he is one of the most humble people in the world. Have you ever had any friends that tell you how humble they are when you realize that they are dropped something. That you realize that they are probably the least humble people that you know. So as I do on every Friday, I like to talk about the weekly Torah portion. So in Judaism, we divide up the whole of the 5 books of Moses into weekly Torah portions. Like each week, and it's traditionally what you read in synagogue. Depending on your denomination, Orthodox read the entire portion, Conservative break it up, Reform also kind of break it up. And there's also different annual cycles, so it depends on how you do it. But the traditional way was to cover the whole portion every week. So that way, every year, you get to learn about the Torah, right? So what I really want to talk about, though, is this week's Torah portion, which is it's called Shoftim. It's from the book of Deuteronomy. Shoftim means judges. The book of Deuteronomy itself is a rehash of a lot of of what was given at Mount Sinai in the book of Exodus. You see the Ten Commandments are repeated, but there's a lot of additional information, additional laws. There's a lot of laws to do with how to build a society, and Moses was in that position, right? So Moses realized it's the end of his life. It's his last day on earth, actually. And he's giving this speech to the entire Jewish people, and the book of Deuteronomy, of Dvarim, covers that one speech he makes. And there's a very interesting section that talks about kings. Now, of what you should do if you appoint yourself, if you want a king. Now, the idea is, it's not like you have to have a king. The idea is, if you really, really want one, this is how it should. These are the different rules that apply to kings. This is quite revolutionary for its time. There's a lot of aspects of Judaism are revolutionary, right? And the most important aspect of it, and I titled this episode, Is There a Cure for Narcissism? And as we know, leaders and kings, often leaders, kings, queens, members of the Knesset, members of the parliament, members of Congress, a lot of people that go into politics have gigantic egos. Without a big ego, obviously it's very difficult to, it's difficult to be humble and at the same time have this ego that you need as a leader. Obviously, you need an ego for leadership, and so the Torah recognizes this. And so when the idea that you should have a king is as a debate whether that's even necessary in the first place, but if you do decide to have a king, and we do know that a lot of the Jew, when you start getting in after the 5 books of Moses, right? We have the book of Joshua, and that moves forward until you get to the book of Samuel, where they want a king, so they have a king. First King Shaul, King Saul, had some ego issues. King David was this kind of the minstrel type musician, not so keen on it necessarily. So maybe he was an ideal king. What happened afterwards, after he became king, that's a different story. But Lord Acton made a very interesting comment, and that is, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so the Torah, going back into the Torah, so the Torah verses, there's a number of verses that discuss the rules for a king. The first rule is, number one, he has to have a Torah next to him, right? The law. So he realizes that he isn't king supreme, or she, right? We can talk about queens, but that's, obviously the Bible itself is very patriarchal. So I don't want to get into that argument. Why it's just king, right? So But at the same time, and the one thing that was very important, the series of laws, is that the king is told, you shall not have a multitude of horses, wives, all right, again, patriarchal, so I apologize if it sounds a little sexist, and acquisitions, right? You shouldn't be constantly looking to get the next greatest thing. Right? We can all think about that in terms of ourselves as well. But what it's really talking about is a foreshadowing of King Solomon. King Solomon, and he wrote Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, and he discovers everything. He tried everything. He tried it all, right? He was like a rock and roll king, but it didn't really end well for him. It wasn't the ideal situation. Yes, he built the temple, but it was all really downhill from King David, to be honest with you. But this important lessons that the king has to abide by, that the king should not be looking to amplify his greatness through the acquisition of great properties and trying to dominate, right, the women that are his subjects, so to speak, right? He shouldn't use that position so that he can, in the words and terms, marbe nashim, right? That he creates a multitude of concubines. Again, that's frowned upon. At one point, having multiple wives at one point in Judaism was permitted, and then they decided at the turn of in the early 100s there was a big ordinance, it's called a takana, which is like an amendment to the Jewish constitution, so to speak, that monogamy became it's better to be monogamous in your relationships, which makes a lot of sense. But it brings to the question, what is this idea of humility? Why should a king be humble? And that's what's revolutionary about the Torah. Recognize, because we see the king of Egypt thought themselves as God. Kings going through history have always have had that very difficult relationship with their own. They find it very difficult to be humble. And it brings to the question, the modern question of narcissism. In a modern society, right, we live in this time of selfies, right? What's a selfie? So you pick up your phone, right? You pick up your phone and it's this, right? If you ever go somewhere, everyone's doing this, or if it's something cool, then they're going to film everything. But usually it's just like, hi, or they're just looking at yourself in the selfie, 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 selfie. Unless it's a food selfie or a selfie of your cat, which I can believe selfie's cat. Or you wear the name tags of whatever fancy design things you're wearing. But what that really is, it's a question. So I've been going through this week Rabbi Sacks's book on spirituality, the last book on the Torah portions that he wrote before he died. And he talks about this idea of the me type of culture that permeates society, the inward looking, the selfie, the idea, the obsession with self. Right, which is what narcissism in a sense is. I'm not saying that if you like taking selfies, you're not. I do selfies. We all do selfies, but it's about something more than that, right? That narcissism, right? So you could be completely on the narcissist. Depends where you are on the narcissistic spectrum, right? I'm a musician and a rabbi, right? So we have that narcissistic tendencies. We recognize that. I saw that wonderful documentary series on the Rolling Stones, and Mick Jagger, was asked the question, and he goes, I have to, when I go up there, you have to be 100% ego, more than 1,000% ego. And you have to be that. You have to have that ego to get up on stage and do it. Right, well, he doesn't. He talks a little more posh than that. To get up on stage, I don't like Keith Richards' voice that well. I could do it when I'm singing, but that's not his voice. And then he said, so I'm 100% ego when I'm up on stage. It's all ego. Put it all there. Puts it all out there. But when he's off stage, so the journalist said to him, so what about when you're off stage? He goes, well, I'm 50% ego. I thought was a very self-aware and interesting point that he made, right? So you have to have that element of ego to interact, to be on stage. But at the same time, narcissism is something where it's all, you live in a society where it's everybody for themselves. Everybody, they're rushing for the toilet paper. We all saw everyone just pushing over people to get toilet paper, right? What the fuck, toilet paper? It still blows my mind that was, but that is an element of narcissism that's all for me. And so what this Torah portion is doing when they are discussing, when it discusses how a king should be humble, right? Someone with that power should be humble. It's also talking about ourselves. That instead of looking inward, right, you have to look outwards. You have to look outward at the people around you. You should see, and that's this idea of what the divine image in every human being is, right? And the king of all people, that's why he keeps the Torah next to him, so that he can understand that there is that he has to abide by something higher than himself. And then this was eventually developed into Christianity took this with their kings. You see, if you look at some medieval stuff, you see these kings going on pilgrimages. Didn't work so good for Henry VIII, right? We could talk about, most people that seek positions of leadership do not have that, are narcissists. But there are plenty of, and the really good politicians you see on, especially on a local level. I'm referring to a friend of mine who's the mayor here of Palm Desert. I'm not going to name a name, humble person. But you see in local politics, you see a lot of these humble people who are in politics, and sometimes not. They have ambitions because they want to be president, right? But you have to be, but you have to at the same time learn how to look out and care for other people. That your mission should be, I want to make this a better world. I want to be there for other people. And that's this idea of when you look at a higher power, look at something that is bigger than yourself, it creates a type of humility that makes, instead of you looking inward, you're looking outward. When you believe in God, then you start seeing the godliness, the holy in everybody around you. That you no longer are in it for yourself, but rather you're in it to make this a better world, a better planet. And so the idea in the Torah of this week's Torah portion that, the warning given to the Jewish people that when you go into the land of Egypt, if you do into the land of Israel, and you decide to have to appoint yourself a king, or the prophet ends up appointing the king, then the king has to abide by all of these rules. And the king has to show that type of humility, right? Moses, who was the humblest of all prophets, right? The greatest of all of the Jewish leaders. He was named the greatest. The Torah at the end says there was no one that was more humble than Moses. He did not seek out the leadership. He did not seek out to be the leader to take the Israelites out of the Egypt. He says, who am I? Right? Abraham, the father of monotheism, the father of the monotheistic religions. He said, who am I? I'm just dust and ashes, while he's fighting for the people of Sodom. Right? Recognize these are the two greatest figureheads in Jewish history, or the parables of Jewish history, whether it was of actual physical Moses or was there an actual guy called Abraham? Was there a guy called Moses? Right? That's a question we can ask, right? In terms of if we study biblical criticism, that's a question. I personally, I maybe there was a Moses. I see it as a metaphor. I believe in the words of the Torah, but at the same time, I recognize that it's the character that is important. It's the idea of who we look to as our leaders that is important. That when you see leaders who are humble, people like Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. King, and other leaders that we can think about. I'm trying to think of some presidents that were considered humble. Not so sure, right? But there's a difference between self-deprecation and being humble, right? Some people are a little self-deprecating, but really looking for a answer. They're looking for, like, you ever go, oh no, you're not really, you're really actually really humble, right? Or you say, oh, I play guitar like crap. No, you're not, you're really good, right? Fishing for compliments, right? That's different than someone who is humble. The word humble, there's two different words. There's shiflut in Hebrew, which means kind of self-deprecating, and anava, that's the word for humility, and they're very two different ideas. Humility really means you're looking outward, right? You're looking outward at other people. Why me? Why are you putting me in that position? It should be him, right? That's you recognizing that you have your own limitations, right? Narcissism is the opposite. Narcissism is that you think it's all about you. And again, I'm not saying that, I'm saying we all have different levels of spectrum of narcissism. Some people don't. I know people who are completely not narcissistic at all. So looking outward, that's kind of this is the high holidays coming up. This is the month of Elul. Let's try to look more outward. It's okay to take a selfie, but think about, we need to be more outward. We need to create a bigger circle around us. Try to reach out to those people that you don't necessarily think that you're going to get along with, right? Sometimes you get an instant, we either get along with people instantly or we don't necessarily, right? Or it's kind of power of, right? It's mutual. And there's certain people that we take an instant dislike to. But maybe we take an instant dislike to them because of our narcissism, because we see ourselves in them, right? So once you get beyond that, you can get beyond yourself, right? You understand yourself, then you can really become a better human being. That's an important aspect of self-improvement. You don't have to be a king to learn those laws. So talking about kings, and I watched the first episode of Lord of the Rings of Power yesterday. So I wanted to give you my initial thoughts on that. I saw it at Comic-Con. I was at the big Hall H with 10,000 of my fellow Comic-Con. How many? It's a lot of people in there. It was amazing. It was just amazing how they brought all the panel out. They explained it, right? So we're really excited. We watched the first episode last night, and I know there's another one we're going to watch again tonight, and I'll talk about it on Monday. But the first episode, it kind of there's a spoiler alert if you haven't seen it yet. Go la 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 la. But the first episode really discussed. It brought in. It was a little slow. The cinematography was absolutely amazing. I thought it was wonderful. I mean, just the watching, just the way they took New Zealand, which is where the location where it was filmed, and just it was absolutely lush and lavish, and it was the most expensive TV show ever made. It was a little slow though. The character developed, but they have to develop the characters. If you read J.R. Tolkien, you know that it's. Tolkien is a very difficult. I've been rereading The Lord of the Rings in preparation for this, and it's difficult to initially get into. There's a lot of information, and so the showrunners were very brave in the way they they're bringing in the elves and the like the Hobbit type people. I forgot their name. Brandyfoots. Forgot the name. And then the orcs, and they're looking at it from all of the humans, right? The land of men, the land of elves, the land of the dwarves, and the land of the OG hobbits, and all of the characters are really introduced to us, and so I think it had to be slow. I was surprised to see on Amazon Prime that when you look at it, they had 1 star, and all the fanboys and the girls are all ripping on it, right? They hate it so far. I don't hate it. I really liked it. I thought it was, yes, I can see why they didn't like it. I can see why they were going, well, this isn't like the appendices because in ... There's a lot of really crazy people out there who are obsessed with every single letter that is put into The Lord of the Rings and every single letter that is in all the 3 books. And, I mean, if you read the introduction, the new introduction to the 50th anniversary, I believe, you'll see that they talk about how, people make it their missions in life to be true to the original manuscript. I'm in the process of not learning Elven. I am trying to learn Spanish. I think is a little bit more important than learning Elven. Although I did spend a lot of time in Wales, so it's a little similar, the languages. Anyway, so I think it's a good start. The character development was good. I don't want to give that much away, so I'm not going to. I'm going to give you my full thoughts after I watch the second episode. But by the end, it's you got to have a little patience for the first half an hour. But if you get yourself into it, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how good this show is. And just on the topic of, so that's my thoughts on the Rings of Power. And I wanted to talk a little bit about top secret. All right, top secret. How secret? What is the secret? So I know why I'm a little obsessed with all these documents that former President Trump brought to his house in the FBI raid, and I made some jokes earlier about whether or not the top secret documents were about alien spaceships or Who killed the Kennedys? When after all, it was you and me. That's my Rolling Stones reference there. But, what if it's nuclear secrets? What if it's these are top secret documents about intelligence assets? These are human beings out there serving their country, and what if these documents are just laying around or being used for nefarious purposes or innocently leaked and or without the intent? I'm not sure what I can't go into. I don't know his mind. I don't know what his intentions are. It's not my job to know that. I just got to wonder what's with all the top secret documents. Was it staged by the FBI? Right? These are all kind of questions you got to ask. I don't believe it was. I think that's their procedure is to photograph evidence. When they're under a lot of pressure as well from the media, and so there's an element of transparency. Why did you do that? Why did you have to go and raid a unprecedented raid a former president's home? Well, I mean, one of the answers is there was a discovery where they asked up to June 3rd, and President Trump's team in Mar-a-Lago said, we thoroughly searched to make sure that all the documents, and then the FBI, just found it laying around in his desk drawer. So so is it a crime to be a slob? If it was, I'd be in jail. But at the same time, the rules. There are certain people in life who don't believe the rules apply to them, and it goes back to this idea of kings. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, it doesn't matter. I declassified all the documents with a wave of his hand, a wave of his staff. He declassified all of the documents. You are now no longer top secret. I don't care about the asset that is saving this country from from a nuclear bomb going off in New York. Who may save that? Because I have waved my hands and made all of this go away. It's all gone away. Anyway, that's enough of my rant about that. I used to be kind of shy to criticize the Donald. I just don't feel like I need to do that anymore. I don't. Life is too short to not speak out against injustice. Life's too short not to whether or not he's unfairly being picked on or he deserves to be picked on. I think it's something that should be discussed, right? Do I think the man should be president again? No, I do not. I think it was very divisive. I don't think I'm not that happy with most of the leaders that we have. And I think that it's time for a leadership change. I'd be more than happy to see it coming from any of the political parties. But there needs to be a leadership change. We need to get out of this kind of cycle of attacking the other side, right? Looking outward. That's the message. That's the message of the Torah portions. Looking outward. The humility of kings. The humility to being humble enough to recognize that you're wrong, that you don't have all the answers, that maybe the person that you're talking to, even though you don't agree with them, may have a point on some areas. Right? You can find common ground. This is what it's all about. This is what the high holidays are all about. This is what Elul is all about. This is what life's all about. Learning to understand human interaction is all about. Right? COVID took that away a lot. Right? We started hiding behind our computers, behind our cameras, but not going out there. Right? But we need to go out there. We need to go out there and look outward and do things for others. And that's my message. And I'm going to end. It's Friday. It's a Friday night, Erev Shabbat before Elul. We don't blow the shofar on Shabbat, but we do blow it on Fridays. And then Sunday we'll blow it again. It's blown again, but I won't be here Sunday. There's no Rabbinic Cynic on Sundays. So with that, I wish you a very Shabbat Shalom. A wonderful weekend, a happy Labor Day, and if you're here in the Coachella Valley, in Southern California, it's a huge heat wave. A friend of mine posted a post in the Coachella Valley. It is just Friday. It's just as hot as it is. It's really hot though. Anyway, I'm going to blow the shofar with that and say Shabbat Shalom. Live long and prosper. Peace out.